Hello and welcome to A Celtic World, the YouTube channel and podcast that celebrates the fact that we've got a worldwide fan base for the famous Celtic. From Holyrood to Ho Chi Minh City, from Kilmarnock to Kilimanjaro, wherever you are, you're very much a part of A Celtic World, and it's great for us to have you along. Thanks for being here. And who else have we got here? Well, we are hopefully a much smoother operation than we were last week. It was hopefully a decent show, but we were a bit hectic beginning and end. So we've started a little bit smoother. Hopefully we can continue that throughout the show. Greg in London, welcome along. How's things going, Greg?
Going really well, thank you. Looking forward to talking to you all about Celtic and the chat.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Great to have you here again. And David in Bangkok becoming a Thursday night regular from a Monday night slot. How are you, David? How's things?
Yeah, good. I'm happy to fit in on Mondays or Wednesdays or take up my position on the bench as required. So looking forward to a good chat after the delights of last week and see how we can improve for this weekend.
Good man, a team player who's happy to contribute where required. We all need one of them. And I noticed, I watched Monday's show back earlier in the week, and I did notice that you said you were coming from a steady Bangkok, and it seemed to have evaded the panel's sort of memory. Even a couple of shows, how busy the world with news moves. We've got tariffs. We've forgotten about an earthquake in Bangkok that was pulling down buildings a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, we're very pleased that it is steadier in Bangkok and life is kind of hopefully getting back to normal. And our compatriot from Wales, a week later than planned. Ian, how you doing, mate? Good to have you back.
Yeah, I've learned about daylight saving and stuff like that, and I've educated myself on that sort of thing, because obviously I was meant to be on last week, and then I don't know if you noticed, but I turned up like at the normal time, and then I was like, right, no one's here, this is weird. Then I went into the chat, and then I suddenly realized the clocks have changed for the UK, but not necessarily for everyone else. So yeah, I usually rely on Gav to do that specifically for me, chasing me up 20 times to make sure I understood. So if he's back next week, that's good just for me organizing myself.
Yeah, no, I did send him a message in the aftermath of last week and said, FFS, it's like herding effing cats. How do you do it? So yeah, no, I don't. I'm looking forward to him being back. And yeah, I'll be honest. With work and a generally pretty busy life, I didn't have the wherewithal to be running around holding hands and pulling pants up and other bits and pieces. So sorry, chaps. That's how we landed. But yeah, good to have you all the same. And as is often the case when things aren't going as well, we've probably got more to speak about than when it's all bobbing along nicely. So good to see a few of you in the chat already. Add in your commentary as you go. I can see our colleague Kaiser in there. Hail Legends morning. Same to you, Kaiser. Good to have you along. And we've also got, he's given us from Bridge to Botswana. Hail. Good man. Getting into the spirit of things. So yeah, chuck in your comments, get involved. We'll pull them up as we can. I haven't got a run sheet. Well, I've got a run sheet. I just haven't got an agenda because technical issues that I'm not going to bore you with. But what we are going to cover today is we're going to have a quick look back at the debacle in Perth last week and sort of how we're feeling about it nearly 4 days later, and how does that sort of lead us into Saturday's game versus Killie, which should have been a title party and now isn't. We will talking about that game in terms of the game itself, but more specifically about how we'll shape up, repercussions from the game last week, how that affects the team, and all of that stuff. And then we'll also sort of look at scenarios of when the league might actually be won, if it's going to be won. And then we'll talk about how that leaves us sort of forward looking briefly. And we will then try and maybe just round out the show with maybe trying to put a little bit of perspective on the last few weeks, at least since the Champions League came to an end. So if we're all happy with that as an idea, we'll continue. Just quickly jump back to comments. Got Who's the Snitch? Gentlemen, hail to you. And Martin has been coming in. Hail, fellow champions. Indeed, mate. Good to have you along. So I guess we'll start there. Ian, we've obviously not heard from you for a week or two, and in the interim, obviously, the world's nearly at end, both financially and more specifically, about Celtic's fortunes. How are you feeling nearly 4 days later after that game at McDermott Park?
It's a tough one. I've always mentioned before, I'm relatively decent at balancing emotions after things like this. I think my overriding one at the weekend was, it was honestly one of the most boring games I think I've ever watched in my life. It was like, it was just so boring, and it looked like we could like play 5 times and not score. The frustrating thing for me was the thing that we've just not learned about is that conceding that early goal. We seem to do it. Things that are annoying me are stuff like when we do well, like in Bayern Munich, we get Rodgers talking about like how he's tweaked this, how he's tweaked that. When we've been just messing up since then, it's not his fault. It's people that don't want to be there or whatever, and all this sort of thing. And I think it's just, you can be very reactionary to it, and I think there is an element of stepping back and saying, look, we are where we are. There's going to be complacency and stuff like that. And I kind of understand that argument, but I kind of view it as Rodgers' responsibility that we had the chance to win the league at home to Kilmarnock, which I think, I don't know what the statistic is. I think the last time we won the league at home was at like 2013 or something. I'm sure it's like quite a while ago.
7. I heard somebody else say 7 seasons since we've won it at home.
Was it 7? Was it 7? So, you know, if that's not imposing the players, and plus the other annoying thing is like 100% Kuhn should not have been starting on form. It should have been Yang. Maeda shouldn't have get taken off. There's just a couple of things, and you're just like, do you know what I mean? Really? So I think it's kind of more frustrating, and I think it's just a lot of the things that have kind of happened have actually happened all season, and kind of generally since Rodgers has come back. And I think they frustrate us all more when we have losses like that, and we have kind of papered over the cracks. And you can make the arguments for complacency, like I said, and coming to the end of the season and things like that, not replacing Kyogo, etc. And I think it's just that kind of big melting pot that, yes, we have to have the respect if it's the treble, but also we've still got, 2 cup games. And if we come up against like someone, even St. Johnstone in the next round, or if we get through to the final against like an Aberdeen or a Hearts or something, we can't be giving them the same sort of goal head start and playing rubbish, because we did the same thing with Hearts. We could have easily lost a goal there at the beginning, and then we'd have had trouble there. We've done it with St. Johnstone. We can do the same, roughly the same sort of goal against St. Johnstone as we did against Rangers. It just seems that we're not learning, and the warning signs are there, and we just have to rely that Rodgers is going to sort it somehow. But so that's it. So a mixed board of emotions.
Yeah. David, do we think there was an overreaction to the result, or generally? I know you're always going to get extremes on social media, but there was generally, and look, even the manager was the strongest comments I think I've seen him in a post-match interview. He stopped just short of naming names, but it was pretty obvious he was extremely unhappy, and that there will be players, if he has his way, moving on in the summer based on attitude. I think the most damning thing he said was, he was asked if he was surprised and he said no. Now, that tells me that players are getting picked because he doesn't feel like he's got anything better, even though he knows that their attitude isn't right. Because we should absolutely expect him to say, well, yeah, I am surprised because the guys have been hungry all week. They've been sent out with a plan. Get this game done, and then you've got a chance to clinch it in your own backyard. It's party time. Instead, and we'll get to this later, but there's every chance we could be winning the title with our feet up watching the telly on Sunday. Which, okay, we'll take it any way it comes. It's sort of 8-9 months of work that gets you there. But when you've got an opportunity to win it at home at lunchtime and then have all day on Saturday for people that are local to party and the rest of us, in the evening or whatever, it just seems crazy to not go ahead and, put everything into it. And we were just slow to start and lax, just generally poor. Yeah, David, do you think there was an overreaction, or do you think it was absolutely justified?
I don't think it was overreaction at all. I think that St Johnstone had given us like 3 stands, so effectively we had pretty much a home game against the bottom team. The fans were all up for it. You can make excuses for the pitch or the ref or blah blah blah, but we just weren't at it at all for whatever reason. We were terrible. And it's one of these things. It's easy to be sort of clever after the event in terms of who could have played, who should have played. But if we had turned up, we would have battered them. I'm not doing any more predictions. I've given up instead of 7-0, etc. But no, I think the reactions were fair enough. Could Rodgers have kept Maeda on? I think for me that was the one thing that was frustrating, because even it is put him on the wing. If you look at the chance that Jamesy had coming in, that would have been on a plate for him. So for Maeda, so didn't make any sense. Someone who had scored the last 11 domestic games, but as I say, it is easy to be clever in hindsight. But no, I think for me, what was more frustrating was being in Bangkok, where for most of us in Asia, it's very rare to get a game that's at a good time. And that was a perfect time on Sunday. And then leading up to a party this weekend, 6:30 in Bangkok, for anyone that's going to come along. It should have been just beating the bottom team last week, beating the second bottom team this week, and then, having a massive hangover watching Aberdeen beat the Huns on Sunday. But that was for me the frustrating thing. But I think the reactions were exactly justified.
Thanks, David. Greg, were you surprised at the veracity of Rodgers' comments? And did it take you by surprise? Or were you pleased to see that level of, focus on the poor performance? And do you think he should have taken a bit more? You never really get to take personal responsibility, is he? But you think it kind of lies at his door. He's not surprised at poor performances, and he can't get the team to perform at a high level and be switched on from minute one in a game that can sort of pretty much take the title back to your front door. What was your view on Rodgers' reaction, and just generally how we turned up and his instruction.
You're in a reverb, Paul. Now we can't hear you.
There we go.
Well, I thought it was pure deflection by Rodgers, to be honest. He should have taken Kuhn off after 20 minutes and then set the tone for others to say what was going on. I think Sloop, well, there we go. That shows how good Greg Taylor was, because Sloop's been awful the last two, and we haven't sorted out anybody to come in to play backup or play alongside Greg Taylor. I think we're not in a mess, but I think we're going to have a very difficult summer. And it's just insane that Rodgers just says, oh, well, certain people didn't turn up. Rodgers and Calmack set the tone for the team, and they need to get in about these people and tell them what's expected. I don't know what's happened to Alistair Johnston and Kuhn, because they were destroying people down that right-hand side. And ever since Kuhn came back from his injury, I think he's had one good second half against Hearts, and he played very well in the Bayern Munich game away. But apart from that, nothing. So we've gone from Kuhn's going to get called up to the German team, to cricket, and then why is he even in the team? It doesn't make any sense. This is a mentality problem. It's not a talent problem, because you see it. Kuhn comes on, and Yang comes on, tries his wee little heart out, and creates a lot more havoc than Kuhn did for his time on the pitch. I think it's just an absolute farce.
Greg, what do you think about Trusty the day after his wedding coming in for Naroki, who's been probably our best defender for the last few games? What do you think goes on in Rodgers' head with some of those decisions? Because to me, in the starting lineup, I think there's a good argument for Yang, like we've said, but the Naroki one, given he's actually been the best defender, what do you think the logic is there?
Well, Rodgers has his favourites. We know that. That game was awful. I don't know why Hatate stayed on the pitch and Bernardo was on the bench. Yeah, okay, he's not the most creative, but Hatate wasn't having a good game. So I think it was as simple as Trusty was finally fit. Out you come, Rocky. You've had your 5 minutes, and we'll go back to what I know and what I trust. But we know he doesn't trust Trusty, because he hooked him at halftime in the cup final. Said he was weak as pish in the was it the Dundee away game. So we know he's not convinced by him. So we've got Rocky, Scales, and Trusty fighting for a position, and I don't think Rodgers wants any of them, but he believes Trusty is the better player, so he came straight back in. I think that was a mistake, because Nawrocki is a very good passer of the ball. He may be very slow, but he creates things. And again, as Paul and I spoke about after the Glasgow derby, it was Calmac coming back to basically in line to Carter Vickers, taking the ball off him, then trying to see who's available. Surprise, surprise. Everybody's marked, so it goes out to Johnston, and Johnson has to time into prime Messi and create something.
Well, yeah, like obviously, I think obviously that's what usually happens. We obviously had Engels filling in, and we talked about the fact that he was keen to set 5 to 10 yards higher up the pitch, and he was looking for a simple straight vertical pass from CCV, and he had the space to do it, and he was just reluctant to do it. And I agree with you. Nawrocki's probably not the long-term solution, but there's no pace in that front line for St Johnstone. There was no threat of running in behind. That's his probably main weakness, is he's not the quickest. I think positionally he's good. His defensive one-on-one's good. He's good in the air. But most importantly, his distribution is better than anyone else in that centre-back position. The next best is Scales, and that's kind of, that's what we're saying. That's worryingly, we've got, between them, we've got good centre-backs, but they don't all have their complete package. And I'm not sure what's happened to CCV. His game's fallen off a cliff. He still looks solid defensively, but yeah, I don't know. Ian, are you concerned about CCV?
Not really, because I think it's been a long season. I think you also have to take into the fact that he's been playing for that national team. And I think, maybe the same, Trusty hasn't, but CCV's he's had a rough couple of weeks, domestically and internationally. You could argue quite a lot. And I think, going back to it, I think what this season has proven is Scales is the best partner for CCV. And realistically, and I know some people are going to disagree with me, but Starfelt was a better centre-back partner for CCV than anyone we've tried to replace him with, and people didn't appreciate what Starfelt actually did. And I thought he'd be a big loss, and it's kind of proven it, and we've tried to spend the $6 million on Trusty to replace him. And it's not worked out. So that has now become a position that we need to kind of look at in the summer. What I would say is CCV is probably one of the saleable assets. CCV might be one of the ones that's in the shop window, and what we don't want to be in a position is to be having to get two centre backs. So I don't 100%. It's like we're saying. I don't 100% know what's wrong with it. With someone in the comments, I think it was. Hold on, let me just name check. G-Doc said about what's happened with Kuhn and Johnson. We've seen Johnson have a drop off this same time period last season. Yeah, that's the one there. And Kuhn, the one trick pony. That is a real puzzler. And I wish someone would ask that in a pre-match presser, like the people who actually have access to that, because that's a real one. For the whole first half of the season, that was one of our biggest weapons, and it's just not happening anymore. Johnson's still trying to make some of the runs, but not as much anymore. And only one person can answer it, and that's Brendan Rodgers, because has he told them to do something different, or if they've stopped doing it, why has he not told them to do it again? Because I think that is a massive weapon from the beginning of the season, and the success that's disappeared. And again, I know we had a little joke about me the other week about being a top journalist, but this is where I kind of lament the lack of proper journalists in Scottish football, because that's a really identifiable thing, along with a couple of other things that could be asked to Rodgers in a press conference so we could understand it, because we can all see the issues. Like, we're all sitting here going, like, we're slow to start. That dynamic down the right has stopped. The midfield isn't working 100% properly. People are off of form, etc. Kyogo not being replaced. All these sort of things. But these questions aren't being posed to Rodgers, either because people are afraid or they're just not competent enough to do the job that journalists did 10 years ago. So we're sitting here speculating and wondering. Be really good if someone turned up to a press conference and asked some of these things, so we'd have a bit more to understand, because there will be a reason.
Did anyone see that article in the Herald in the last, I don't know if it was this morning or the last 24 hours or so? Obviously time difference, I'm not sure, but it was basically a follow-up to the St Johnstone match, but it was particularly picking out like exactly that, Ian, the drop-off in Kuhn's form. He was basically a shoe-in for Player of the Year come the turn of the year, one hand on the every Player of the Year trophy going, and his form's fallen off a cliff outside of a handful of games. Probably, you can count Bayern Munich in amongst that. One of the things that the point was making, I think it might have been a wee bit of mischief making, but it was basically saying, is the real Kuhn the Kuhn that we saw for the second half or the first half of this season, or is the real Kuhn the player we're seeing now, the player we saw prior to that? And that great bit of form was, a blowout, and not now he's returning back to the mean. If you think, like that's the complaint at other clubs, that's why he's not made it. He never made it at Ajax. He never made it at Bayern Munich, because he's not consistently put that together for long enough. And there's maybe question marks about his consistency. And whilst there might have been a bit of mischief making in that article, and I can't remember off the top of my head who wrote it. It was definitely in the Herald. There is that, he's entitled, that criticism is entitled to be pointed at him because of how big the drop off has been, and just a general kind of, it is a bit of a lack of interest. Like, he had that one good cut in early doors and he hit straight at the keeper, and then he's got a brilliant chance shortly thereafter where, to me, I just think you're just throwing yourself at that ball that breaks from the Maeda shot that gets parried, and you're putting yourself through people. You're taking everything, and I think it's just
no. Do you know what? I don't like to label the sort of uninterested or wanting away at Kuhn. I think it's just the classic winger thing of him being out of form and heavily out of form. I actually think that this is another symptom of not replacing Kyogo, because Rodgers obviously doesn't trust Yang, right? So he can't replace Yang in there and he doesn't trust Ida, because Ida at the moment looks like a competition winner, for being completely honest. So Maeda has to be in there. And I think if we'd replaced Kyogo, then I think you would have 100% seen Kuhn drop and Maeda moved out and Jota starting there. So I think that sort of thing can be tied into some of the decisions. So I don't think Kuhn has always looked, he never looks like the happiest guy in the world. He's a bit like Hatate in that sense. So I don't think his head's been turned. I don't think he's wanting away and stuff. I think he's just he's a winger, he's a confidence player, and his confidence is just shot now. And there could also be an element of, he's seen Jota come back in, everyone going absolutely nuts for Jota, loving him, and he's gone from being the favourite, the golden child of the support, and then Jota's come back and he's like classed as not as good as Jota, even though his numbers were better. So I think there's a number of things in there, but again, these are the sort of questions we need to kind of, I wish someone would be asking these, because they're good questions and it's a good discussion, but there's one person who can answer these, and it's Brendan Rodgers, and it'd be good to hear his actual thoughts on them.
Yeah, it's definitely a head scratcher, because I can't work out why his form was dropped off a cliff. It was flying so high. He then scores a goal against his old club in Munich that nearly wins us the game, and obviously we know what happened. Like you'd think he'd come off the back of that absolutely flying and continue the domestic form, and he hasn't. So, it's a hard one to pick. There's definitely, you can definitely make an argument that he thinks he's done enough to get himself a move, and therefore, potentially doesn't want to risk an injury that takes that off the table. But equally, you're right. Wingers are, they do come in and out of form, and he definitely is a confidence player. You can see when his tail's up. His decision making. Like, my one criticism with him my one criticism early was, even when he started to get in a bit of form, his decision making wasn't the best always. But when he's in form, his decision making it's just like he goes into autopilot, and it's like, yeah, I'll go beat this man, or I'll shoot, or I'll pass it here and I'll go back over. Like, but when he's not in form, it's almost like he's second guessing everything. And yeah, it is a real puzzler, and yeah, hopefully he can get back into some form. But I guess that probably takes us into starting to think about the Killie game and squad rotation and who deserves a start? Should we change it up, or should we give these guys a chance to rectify it? Greg, I can see you shaking your head already. Do you want tweaks or wholesale changes, or what are you expecting to see on Saturday?
Yang to start. Rocky back in the team. I'd be tempted to drop Johnston as well and give Ralston a run. Rodgers, I think all four of us here and the chat know exactly what the team will be. Yeah. So if we know what the team will be, the players know what the team will be, and the opposition will know what the team will be. So certain people can play so badly they never get replaced. And that doesn't make people strive for their goals. I just think I understand what Ian's saying. Rodgers doesn't trust Yang, and then no one's expecting Yang to start over Kuhn, Jota, or Maeda. But I'm sorry, what has Kuhn done to start? Is the team, the whole squad, that dysfunctional that you can't say to Kuhn, you're out, Jota onto the other side, Maeda in the mid, onto the left wing, and we'll start Ida. Yeah? If he doesn't have the faith to do that, then why not bring in Kenny? Where is Kenny? Yeah? Why bring back Dane Murray? Where are these players? If they're that bad, the starting 11 know they're going to get picked, no matter how badly they play. So how on earth is Rodgers supposed to motivate them?
Wholesale changes for Greg. David, would you agree? Wholesale changes, or do you think it's a tweak here and there? And one, what would you like to see? Two, what you think will happen?
Yeah, definitely not. I think I can't see any logic why you would ever want to replace Maeda in a centre forward. I mean, 11 goals in 12 games, or scored in 11 goals. It would be nonsense to put Ida in there. I mean, as Ian mentioned, Ida's not going through the best of times just now. So the one position that absolutely has to be nailed on is for Maeda to be centre forward. Has to be nailed on. In terms of Kuhn, I think Ian raised a few different points. When he was a couple of minutes ago, when is Kuhn's drop in form because Kyogo didn't get replaced, etc. I think that one of the things that the problems last weekend was that the pitch was shit and Kuhn struggled. He is a confidence player, and for whatever reason, he's definitely not at it. I think he's got tons of skill. You cannot be as good as he was for the first half of the season to become a shit player. So I'm not saying that he should start. I think Yang would this would be a good time for Yang to show what he's got. I wouldn't play Ralston. If we're swapping Kuhn and we're swapping Johnston, then we'll get two very inexperienced people on the right side, and I wouldn't do that. Last week also, in terms of whether it should have been Navrowski or whether it should have been Trusty, I think all of us were surprised that Trusty came straight back in. I kind of thought he probably would come in over the next few games when his speed was more important. But I was very surprised when he did start last weekend. But he wasn't the problem last weekend. We were 1-0 down after 2 minutes. Wasn't him marking, etc. Everything was wrong last weekend. But I wouldn't be changing for the sake of it, and certainly not wholesale changes.
Thanks, David.
Paul,
Ian?
Can you bring up that comment from Chris D, please?
Chris D.
No, it's the other one. It says a few players could have been dropped after the derby. AJ especially, when he's telling the fans to calm down after 70 minutes and we're 1-0 down to St Johnstone. Get him to France, yeah? I think that is the level of how the fans feel. Whether it's an overreaction or not, I don't know. But AJ shouldn't be telling people to calm down at 70 minutes.
Yeah, I think at that point you should be concentrating on your own game and getting back into it, especially when you're not having your best of games. I get the frustration, but yeah, best to concentrate on the game. Ian, we've got splits so far. We've got wholesale changes or a few tweaks. You're circumspect on these things. What's your view?
Look, I think Greg's spot on. Everyone who's watching this, everyone here knows what that team's going to be. We know what that team's going to be. I would not be surprised.
So you agree there'll be little or no changes? You think it'll be the same team?
There's a bit of me. Well, because Trusty's been yanked at halftime before and then started the next game. Okay, because there's a bit of me that's like he's yanked Kuhn at halftime, so maybe Yang will come in, and I think that might be the only one. Apart from that, I would not be shocked. I would not be shocked to see the exact same team going out. That would be classic Rodgers. And again, it's what I said earlier on. This is classic Rodgers. He's done it for his first time here. He's done it like in his second period here. And when it's all going well, we're all well and good. But when it's not coming off, we're asking questions. And one of the things that the issues that's really been exposed, because I know we're talking about maybe like could Ralston come in, Bernardo come in, Ida come in and stuff like that, is the rotation when we have been winning and in control of games and doing well has been shocking. Now, we can argue that the players who are coming in aren't of the quality, but they're not even getting the consistent time to kind of show that they're the quality. Like Dane Murray, we saw him for a bit and then he's just not been seen again. Should he not have been coming in for a couple of games? Same thing with Narok, he just comes out of the cold. But, you know, Yang is probably the only one that's come in a little bit and shown something, and then that's where that debate's coming because we can see him. So I just think we're, like I said, we know what that team's going to be, and no one watching this, no one on this call is going to be shocked if that same team that started against St. Johnstone starts, and no one is going to be shocked if we lose an early goal in the exact same way and have a tough game. Okay, no one's going to be shocked. We're all just going to be sitting here and that's it. And that's a worry. And to go back to your comments about Rodgers, the fact that he could see it coming, I think that's actually a bit more damning on him, because if he could see it coming, why did he not do something about it? Why did he not do something drastic? Why did he not change the tactics? Why did he not change the personnel? If he could see it coming, even with half that team out, we should be beating bottom of the league on whatever the pitch is. So I think it's more a damning reflection on him that he could see it coming. I suspect, actually, when he heard that question, he didn't want to be like Barry Ferguson, who was asked it when he was like, oh, I didn't see it coming, and be the meme. I think the meme's in his head, and he's like, he'll say, I'm not surprised, because he doesn't want to be the same as Barry Ferguson. I think that's just the ego of Rodgers. I think that's a possibility.
Right, yeah, you're probably right. I didn't want to get into the over-analysis of the St. Johnstone game, but it's a good point you picked up in terms of him taking responsibility. One of the things I found very weird about the way we lost the opening goal is, for some reason, we seem to be back on zonal marking. Like, nobody picks up the defender that scores. There's nobody even close to marking, never mind touch tight. He runs 10, 12 yards across the box, has a free jump, and knocks it in the back of the net. If we think back, okay, it's Bayern Munich in Champions League, but if it's good enough for Bayern Munich in the Champions League, why is it not good enough for domestic? We were man-marking in the Champions League, and we've been man-marking earlier in the season in the derbies and stuff like that. It just seems weird to me that he's reluctant to chop and change tactics in the match, but then he chop and change that kind of tactics, which is really important.
But before you even get into that, right, into that change, which I agree is like a wild change, we should just be doing it and we should be committing to something. Before you even get into that, the goal that was scored was the same one that was scored in Rangers. Someone running across that front post like a little midget, like running, like, just getting in pushed. And the problem there with that is after the Rangers game, he said, we've had all week, we've been working on the things that, one of the key things with that should be the slow start and not conceding the goal early and not conceding a carbon copy in the game that they've spent a week learning over. Now, it could be that maybe the zonal marking is a result of that and he thought that would fix it, but clearly not. That could possibly be the reason for it. They think it's a way to combat the goal that they've let in now twice, but if that is, it's just, yeah.
And even just simple stuff like Hatate got a lot of grief for being beaten at the front post. I don't think you can attribute any blame to him. He's just covering an area He's 5'8". The guy that scores is 6'2". He's got the run on him, and the ball clears Hatate. Even Hatate jumps and it still clears him. So either you put a bigger guy on the front post who can jump and defend that when it comes in, or you've got somebody tracking the runner. Like he just.
But Paul, we discussed this, but I think our corners are a real issue because we discussed. Remember, we were discussing about Ida being on the line instead of Kyogo and not being in the centre to head the balls away. So I don't know what they're doing there. Corners have been corners and set pieces have been a constant, like, you know, Celtic kryptonite all of this season, even when we've been doing well, and they've just not rectified them. So you do have to ask, like, and again, no one's asking Rodgers the question, why are we so bad at set pieces? You know, why we conceded the same type of goal like in two games now. No one's asking this, and we need to. Yeah,
I think we've started overreacting now, boys. To be honest, seriously.
Well,
I'm listening to you, but I need to sort of say something here. We've gone through the whole season, and we've only conceded 4 goals. Four games when we've conceded at home. We had a situation where we conceded a goal against the midget, against the Huns, and then we've gone zonal, and that hasn't worked. So I could understand the logic if we had stuck with man on man. Then people would say, "Oh, but you never learnt your lesson from the Huns game." So now you've gone zonal, and that's not worked. So there's a lot of overreaction here, lads. We're far away from being as bad as what I'm hearing. I don't know what the people in the chat are hearing, but seriously, boys, we're miles better than what we're talking about just now.
But would you agree, David, that these problems that we're talking about have been problems for us even all season when we've been doing well? And it would be reasonable to ask the question of why they're not being fixed. Because when we're not playing well, there is an issue. Do you know what I mean? That I know what you were saying about like the position that we're in and stuff, and I can definitely take that. It's worked for us for most of the season, but I think mistakes and issues are highlighted when we're not doing well. That doesn't mean that they're not real mistakes. That have, like I said, the corner one with Ida not being in there, we discussed that even when we were doing well. So is it not a reasonable expectation that these things should be fixed?
Oh no, 100%. And I think that in our chat group during the week, Greg posted a great comment about Hatate. Somebody was seen in a coffee shop in Glasgow, and Hatate was on his iPad looking over the full game from the previous from the St Johnstone debacle. And the fact that you had someone like Hatate on his own, not with a group of other people, looking at what should have been done better, what could have been done better, that was excellent. And we do expect everyone should always be critical of their own performance and looking at these things. I just don't think that it's quite as bad as what we're going through just now. St Johnstone was a terrible performance by every single player, the manager. But even going back to the thing about how the manager hasn't been making great substitutions, I think there was a stat came up last week that we've got the largest number of goals from our subs of anyone in the league. So there's things from a substitution point of view that the manager has been doing well, but there's no excuses. St Johnstone was diabolical, but I just think that we need to sort of address the original point about overreaction.
Well, I don't think it's an overreaction. To Ian's point, we were specifically talking about set pieces, and I agree with this comment that Kaiser's dropped in there, and a broader discussion about set pieces. He's good. It's reasonable to expect 7 goals a season from a Celtic centre back from corners. And if we had a player like Big Juice Valharan, he would get 20 goals a season. We're squandering crosses. I think we're dreadful on set pieces in both boxes. We're not great defensively from corners and set pieces. Teams target us. They launch the ball in long. They swing balls in on top of us. They look for flickings at the front post. And then for a team that wins as many set pieces as us, how often do we score? I know the set piece generally, the percentage scores from set pieces are low. But Steve made the point on Monday's show The only player that looks a threat from a set piece is Liam Scales, and he's far from being a first pick. Look at Arsenal this season. Arsenal, a team that play really attractive on the deck football, and they've scored a ton of goals from set pieces, presumably because they've got people working on them in terms of coming up with plays, and then they're spending time on the training ground, and then they've actually got the ability to execute it on match day. They've scored tons of goals from corners this season in a style that you would think is like, a Wimbledon of the past, that kind of team, throw the ball, set piece based teams that's their only way to score a goal. I just think we've been lax at this and it's not a new problem. This has been it was a problem during Postecoglou's team. It's a problem in Rodgers' time. First, it goes back years. Probably Martin O'Neill's teams are amongst the last teams that had any decent set piece play. And then
I think the thing is the way to kind of look at it, because I think probably we want to draw a line under this one is if we have a set piece versus the opposition have a set piece, when the opposition have a corner, a set piece, we're all worried we're going to concede. When we have a set piece, we think that nothing's going to happen from it. And I think that's just it. And that's a symptom of like where we are with it. And again, that's probably something we need to address and we need to change. Is it a big issue? No, because we're kind of so far ahead, etc. But I think when we're looking at, especially going into Europe, and maybe grinding out games domestically, etc., especially against Rangers, they seem to kind of have our number there. That's probably something we want to concentrate on. It would be good to see like a set piece coach come in over the summer, because Engels has got a fantastic delivery. That's the thing. That's what we've not had. I know you were talking about since Martin O'Neill. We've not had a better deliverer of a corner for as long as I can remember delivering into those areas. So we just need a bit more. We need a bit more in there. But again, it's one area of a bigger picture.
Yeah, definitely. And I think guys are spot on. There should be a centre back who's the main target. Scales has been it when he's played. It's probably Trusty, right? In terms of height and athleticism, it probably should be him. And he's hit the bar and he scored one, but really, it doesn't seem like we're targeting him, and it doesn't seem like we're making. You're right. Engels got fantastic delivery, but it doesn't seem like we are. And he's been picking players out on various set pieces. But yeah, I definitely feel like we could be doing more there. Okay, let's move it on. I kind of alluded to the fact that I could see Aberdeen winning on Sunday and us getting the job done against Killie, whether that's straightforward or not, and the title being done and dusted whilst we're not even playing. Does anyone else agree with me, or has anyone got a different view? Greg, what's your thoughts on that potential scenario?
Probably a very different opinion to everybody else. But I don't care if Rangers lose to Aberdeen and we win the title, because it's an absolute horrible way to win a title when we're so many points ahead. We were in control of this. We should have beaten St Johnstone and we should beat Killie. But oh no, we slipped on the banana. And now what is going to be like, it's not going to be a party, as you said, Paul. As David said, he was looking forward to arranging a party for the Bangkok CSC. So we're going to win the title on a whimper. And that shouldn't how it's done.
No, sorry, Greg. I have to say, I'm never, as someone who has been through it, like in the 90s and 2000s. Whichever way we win it, I'm going to be having my own form of a party. I'm never going to miss an opportunity to. Again, it's disappointing, but I tell you what, see, as soon as that league is confirmed, everything else will go out of my head, and I will just celebrate that, and then it'll be looking forward to like the cup, and all focus will be in that. Again, it's not ideal. It's not, with people going in for Kilmarnock and stuff, like that. But however we win it, party time. Because the thing is, the season is not just that St Johnstone game. The reason that the team is complacent is because they have done so well. And yeah, we've had a couple of issues over the course of the season. People will say, oh yeah, but it's a poor Rangers team. You'll hear that from Rangers fans. Martin O'Neill team, I think, won by like 21 points one time, and they absolutely idolise that Rangers team that we beat by 21 points. So the history books aren't going to look at it closely once we get the title in the bag, and I'm not going to look at it that closely. I'm going to party away, and then it'll be all eyes on the treble. And I think the fans deserve that, and I think the players deserve to celebrate it as well, because they shouldn't be defined over a couple of bad performances as much as we are kind of analysing it now. That's how I feel.
Yeah, it's a fair point. We've got Kaiser coming in here saying a poor Rangers team are still in Europe. Well, they are, but they're in the second tier. So, you know, they've somehow hung on, staring down the barrel of 6 defeats in a row at home tonight. If Bilbao can get the job done, and we obviously certainly hope that's the case, despite our previous show back in the day about coefficients and the like. I think the coefficient monkeys have done a good enough job on coefficient, and they can take their rest from this tie onwards would be very pleasant. So yeah, hopefully another disappointing night for them, and the locals may be revolting again. Or never mind again, just as usual. Okay, well, yeah, I think I get the point. I think, Ian, you're right. You always take the victory. I agree with Greg to some degree as well, though. It's a bit of a shambles that we've had the opportunity for a lunchtime party on a Saturday and for a nice early Saturday evening kickoff for CSCs around the world.
Entitled CSC, you pair. I'm sorry, you guys are getting put into entitled CSC that you're.
I'm not saying it's not entitlement. I just think that should have been delivered. It should have been delivered. It really
should have been, but
we'll crack on. So do we think it's do we all expect a win against Kilmarnock on Saturday?
No.
No, I don't expect that. I hope we do. Do you know what I would take for it not being as mind-numbingly boring as that St Johnstone one? That is one of the worst games of football I think I've ever seen. It was absolutely awful. I would just like an entertaining game.
David?
6-0.
There we go.
Oh, Jesus. We're probably going to get beat 1-0 on it's a draw. Time's marching on. Do we have any thoughts on how we think the split will pan out? Obviously, the title there's a reasonable chance that the title will go into at least the first week of the split if they can somehow get a result.
Well, you can guarantee we're not going to be at Ibrox the first week of the split.
No. You would say that's probably third or fourth game. Do we
need to give all the police notice, don't you, to get their plans for kettling in the fans? They need to have a bit of notice for that. Get the extra bodies in. So yeah, does anyone know? I didn't check. I've been too busy at work today. Does anyone check what our split is in terms of home and away games we can expect? Is it 3 and 2 or 2 and 3? There's not been much chat about that, and I think that indicates just how much we've dominated this league. Yeah. Like, I think for us, when the split comes, there's only one game that matters, and the reason that game matters is because we've not done well in the last 2 derbies, so everything should be focused on that. I do think there's an element, like we've talked about, that there should be a bit more rotation of players and different pieces like that. I don't expect Rodgers will do that. The most important thing for us after this, post-split is we've got a cup semi, then hopefully a cup final, and we've got a derby game, and those are our last 3 big games that are left, and all eyes should be on those.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the sooner it's done, then we can get some squad rotation. We can sort of give some younger players a go. Hopefully, you don't really see that as much as you would hope expect anymore. This is a comment that's kind of ties in nicely at this point while we're talking about looking ahead. Another one from Christy. The fact they beat us makes me more confident for the semi. I don't know why, but it does. Well, I'll tell you, I think I know why. Because every time we've dropped a poor result against the team, probably with the exception of Rangers, we've come back the following game against them, and usually they're quite in quite close succession, and we've absolutely horsed them. You think about Aberdeen drew and got all the plaudits, then we absolutely scalped them 6-0 in the cup. It's happened. The Dundee and Dundee United draws, we played both those teams shortly thereafter and won the games comfortably. Hibs, again, they beat us, and then, we should probably touch on that. And thankfully, after the fact, that one cost Alan Muir his job. So we'll say au revoir to Alan Muir, and you shan't be missed. Years too late, probably, from a Celtic support point of view, but good riddance, and see you later to him. But yeah, we went on and then beat Hibs comfortably in the cup. So I think it's probably fair to say that there'll be a little bit of a sting there we want to win the treble. We can't do that without dispatching St Johnstone. And in the big, wide open space of Hampden, you think we would want to put a performance on and hopefully, put a good performance in and get through that semi-final. Is that a fair assessment, lads?
David?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the other thing, Hampden, better pitch, wider pitch, suits our style of play. So really we should be all over them for that one. As people have said, Aberdeen 2 each, and then we beat them 6-0. I think probably the fact that we horsed them so badly, it derailed their season completely. I mean, even if they had just had a slight fall, they could have been still going for second place just now. But yeah, I think that it was a wake-up call for us. If you're going to lose when you're 13 points ahead. The only other frustrating thing for me about last weekend was that we haven't really touched on how horrifically bad Rangers were and how fantastically bad Ferguson was. I mean, we could have talked about Ferguson for a week. I mean, some of the comments he was making, there was one he was talking about 90 minutes, and was that an hour and 10 minutes? Was it an hour and 20 minutes? He was all over the place, and we could have been talking about that forever. We could have been having the banter years for about 5 programmes in a row, and instead of that, we mess up with St Johnstone.
We ruined it. We ruined it.
Yeah,
we ruined it by losing to them at home. Every Rangers performance that I see and every loss that he does makes the fact that they came to Celtic Park and wanted it more absolutely. I don't even want to I'm like pretty zen, pretty chill. Do you know what I mean? But if I think too deeply in that, I think to myself, geez, what the hell were we doing? Because it's crazy. They're so bad. The Village is missing one with him in charge there. We're not getting to revel in it as much as we should do because folk haven't screwed the head in, and I think it's annoying. But yeah, so that's probably why we're not speaking about it as much, David. Because the thing is, we've dropped the ball massively in that, and that's the pattern you go to. You can laugh at them so much, but then it traces back to how have we lost to them the last 2 times, and yeah, beggars belief.
Well, we'll pause just briefly before we wrap up the show. We're going to come back and wrap it up in a bit, but we're obviously only coming towards the end of our second season. Unbelievably, it feels a lot longer than that, but we're still a new channel. Obviously, we've been under rather amateurish stewardship for the last 3 or 4 weeks with our fearless leader swanning off around the UK, Ireland, and Europe. But he will be back next week. But in the run up to that, despite our haphazard efforts at times, it would be great if you haven't already liked or subscribed to the channel or liked the show even. It would be great if you could do that. Couple of hundred, 200 or 300 on the channel right now, so we do appreciate you being with us, and we appreciate all the comments. Sorry we can't share them all, but yeah, if you can get behind us, it really will push us on, and yeah, we'll be back next season as well. But in the interim, I'll just share you this little message which might give you a nudge.
Celtic fans are everywhere, even here in China. Billions of us are subscribing to A Celtic World. You should too.
There you go. Billions in China are subscribing. Well, there's billions in China. I'm not sure how many of them are subscribing, but if you've not subscribed yet, please do. We do appreciate it. So yeah, I wanted the one thing I wanted, because as happens in the aftermath of disappointing results and poor performances in general, gnashing of teeth and negativity, I did want to bring us back to a slightly positive outlook before we finish the show. And it was just to try and put a bit of perspective on where we are and how good a season it has been. I think obviously one of the issues we've had, and it probably is complacency amongst certain players that maybe haven't fully grasped the fact that you need to win every game at Celtic regardless, even if you've got a 13, 16, 19 point lead. But I just thought, we've obviously had Champions League quarterfinals this week. I think those games and results potentially give us a little bit of context in terms of how we did in that tournament and how close we got to potentially get into the quarterfinal. Has everybody had a look at the results over the last sort of 48 hours, and any thoughts on that in comparison to how we've performed this season, Ian?
Yeah, I think it's, I think we did well. We were so close to beating Bayern Munich and kind of going through, and then it's the luck of the draw. I think there's been a lot of chat recently. You've seen it online with like English fans talking about how all the edges have been trimmed off of football. There's a lot of praise last night for PSG because they weren't playing it safe. They were just trying to attack, and they overcame Aston Villa's kind of football like that. And it's fine lines and fine margins. I think we've got a good opportunity if we make the right recruitment to possibly do better than we did last year. Because I think the margins, when it's outside the super clubs, when we're talking about like your Bayern Munich, your Real Madrid, your PSGs, etc., I think we're always going to struggle against those. But there's opportunities to kind of do stuff. I think if we dropped into one of the kind of lower competitions, I think we'd be really fancying our chances of winning something this season, given how we've been playing, especially seeing the form of some other teams. So yes, I think we can take a lot of hope from that. I think we did really well. We corrected a lot of errors previously, and it's a case of building on that. And a lot of that will come down to, is Rodgers back in the summer? Can we start making good decisions, like not letting our main striker go and then not replacing them? Different stuff like that. It's a whole club effort, that one.
Absolutely. Do we think Kieran Tierney will be joining Celtic as a potential Champions League winner this year?
Well, he's got a better chance than most of us, but I don't see it. I think that Barcelona battered Dortmund, PSG are a tremendous team. I think people were surprised when they beat Liverpool, but when you look at the team they've got, they're absolutely fantastic. I think Arsenal were amazing last night or the night before. I also think that people were more surprised at Arsenal beating Real Madrid at home than we were for doing so well against Bayern Munich. I think that really shows how well that we've been doing in Europe, that it was less of a surprise. I mean, people were falling over themselves at the shock at Arsenal doing so well. And this is a team that are full of top players.
Yeah. PSG look good. Obviously, Barca flying. It's looking like Arsenal, PSG in one tie. And are you shaking your head? You think Madrid? You think
we'll beat Arsenal?
Do you?
Yeah. Nobody bottles it like Arsenal. They're serial bottlers.
I've spoken like someone who lives in London, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There might be some bias coming through. They're a great side in the Bernabeu, but I fancy Arsenal to get the job done. They've got a really good side at the minute. And much like another London team, it's Europe or bust for them if they're going to win a trophy this season. So, we'll see. Then their nearest rivals will be trying to do the same. And Ange's lot will be out there tonight. We're nearly there, guys. That's pretty much the hour. Does anyone have anything, final comments or anything they haven't got off their chest that they want to mention with regards to the week or so? I think one last one. Do we think the Taylor to Rangers thing is a complete smokescreen for the general collapse of this?
Look, it started with that. It started with that Football Insider. The Football Insider. It was Chris Empty-Headed Boyd making a stupid comment that Football Insider, that's run by folk who have it ripping out them, running with the story, and then it's just gained legs because it's clickbait and people can kind of do nothing in it at all. He's off to Croatia to enjoy himself. But if I can just, you said, is there anything else, Paul? I would just say to everyone watching this, see if we win the league at the weekend in whichever fashion, enjoy it. Have a big party, live it up. It's been a long season. Just because we are as dominant as we are, like all that can change with a couple of bad decisions from our board. So never stop enjoying these titles, and then hopefully we can then move on and look for a treble. So even you, Greg and Paul, you guys, when we lift that trophy, enjoy it, because it's not like not many football fans across the world and teams that get to support have the sort of dominance we do and get to enjoy the sort of success we do. So enjoy it, savor it.
Okay, Ian, I've got a final question for you. If we only win the Premier Sports Cup and the league, has it been a good season?
And we don't secure the treble?
Correct.
It depends on the performances. If we lose because we've not learned from mistakes, so say for example we go out of the cup because we lose a goal in the first 5 minutes and then can't do it, I would say yes. But I'd say league is always a priority. The thing is, again, trebles are not an easy thing to win. We've seen that just because we've been good at it. They're not an easy thing to win. So I would still say it's a successful season. Yes, have we dropped the ball and missed out? There would definitely be questions to ask. But winning the league is the important thing. Getting into the Champions League, securing that money. If you went back at the beginning of the season and said you win a cup in the league, you say yeah, that's success. A treble is like that cherry on top of the cake.
There you go. So right to the end, we've got debate and discussion. So thanks for your contribution, lads. Ian, to answer your question, I will 100% enjoy the league win whenever it comes, however it comes. I'm of the vintage that sadly had a 90s, horrific 90s when it comes to football and winning trophies. Remember the years we came in 4th and 5th. So yeah, no, absolutely. You never know how long it's going to last. We do expect it will last a good long period, but you're right, enjoy it while we can. We've all seen worse times. So yeah, thanks for everybody that's been in the comments. Like I said, a good couple of 100, 200 or 300 on today. I know with times have moved around. We will be at this time now until the watches and clocks move again in the UK and Europe. So yeah, join us on Monday when I believe Gavin will be back in the hot seat, and I will be quite happy to relinquish hosting duties to our leader. Until then, have a good one. Enjoy the game on Saturday, and fingers crossed we can have a title by the end of the weekend. Hail, hail.
Cheers, guys.
See ya.